Today, let's talk about Halloween Season of the Witch, or what I think should have just been called Season of the Witch. This is the sequel that kind of threw everyone off because it did not feature Michael Myers as the villain. He technically is in the movie as he's played on television, like the trailer plays for the first Halloween in one scene, and then a character's watching a scene from Halloween in another part of the movie. So he technically is in Season of the Witch, it's just not about him. This is what I call an unsuccessful branding attempt on John Carpenter's part. However, as a standalone movie, it's still a pretty good movie. John Carpenter initially decided that he wanted Halloween to be an anthology series, and I feel like that idea would have worked had part 2 been a totally different story. Because after part 1, if you put part 2 as a different story, people would have went with it. But after you've done 2 movies, you've already kind of created a brand, and you've created a brand association of the Halloween name with Michael Myers or the shape. So when you come back on a third attempt and try to rebrand, people don't take to it as well. This movie stars Tom Atkins, who is a certified Scream King because he was in The Fog and then he was in Creepshow. Don't forget who puts the friggin' food on the table. I had to say that line. After this, he was in Night of the Creeps. He was walking around talking about Thrill Me. And for me, if you're in 3 or more horror movies, you're a certified Scream Queen or Scream King. In this, Atkins plays a doctor who has to try to unravel the mystery surrounding one of his patients' deaths. The movie opens with a man being chased with some men in suits, and he narrowly escapes them and runs into a gas station where he passes out, and just before he passes out, he says, "They're coming." The gas station attendant or mechanic ends up taking him to the hospital, and he is a great example of the saying, there are no small roles, only small actors, because for some reason, even though he only had 1.5 scenes, that actor really stood out to me. And I haven't seen him in any other movie, but he just really stood out to me, the actor that played the mechanic gas station attendant. The man who was being chased and is admitted to the hospital passes away. I won't say how because, like I said, I'm not spoiling these for the younger people. And his daughter comes to identify the body. Since some things regarding his death seem odd and out of the ordinary, the daughter and the doctor, she and the doctor work together to try to solve the mystery of who killed her father and why. This director uses some of the same camera work or techniques that were used in part 1 and part 2. There are some still shots where the camera doesn't move and you just see the whole room and the characters walk in and out of frame. And I feel like those type of things tied this movie to the first 2 as far as how it's made, its level of production. There's also some really great wide shots that make excellent use of the locations. And they make use of shadows, as some of the men in suits are shown in shadow or in silhouette, similar to the way the shape was in the first 2 movies. The lighting in these first 3 Halloweens is so good. I can't even... That's why I'm so hard on trash like Terrifier. The makers of that movie lit it horribly and shot it even worse. Slasher movies aren't just movies about killers and gore. At their core, slasher movies are mystery, suspense, thrillers with elevated levels of violence. You can't leave out the mystery, you can't leave out the suspense, you can't leave out the thrill. It's not just, oh, I have a killer in a costume and some people to be killed. No, it's deeper than that. It's more than that. But then I've already talked about how and why Terrifier is garbage. And that concludes my TED Talk on how not to make a trash-ass so-called slasher movie in 2018. Anyway, the doctor and the daughter of the deceased man share a motel room, and for some reason this movie thinks that we want to see a sex scene with Tom Atkins. No, thank you. He's a great actor, no doubt, but I was slightly grossed out by his scenes with the actress who was half his age. Fun fact, the older woman that was also staying in the motel named Marge Gutman, that's Tom Atkins' actual real-life wife, and she's way more age-appropriate. Speaking of wives, in this movie his character also has an ex-wife that they show briefly, and she is actually played by the same actress that was in the first Halloween that was trying to hook Laurie up with a date. And for a minute I thought this was also the same actress that was dancing in the living room in Creepshow, the segment called Father's Day. I thought that was the same actress because she looks like her, or at least to me I thought that looked like her, but it's actually a different actress. but they definitely favor each other. Speaking of motels, this motel reminds me of a motel I used to drive past on the Berlin Turnpike on my way to work. It looked like all these little houses lined up. I used to work at AT&T Cable, and my shift was, I think it was 3 p.m. to 11 or 4 p.m. to midnight. I just know it was second shift. And I did customer service, which like 70% of my time was telling elderly people to turn their television to channel 4. About 20% of my time was telling men who didn't want a woman telling them how to set up their cable with their surround sound, with their gaming system. And that would always take a half an hour of me telling them how to set up their system, and then them completely ignoring my directions, doing all these other crazy things, and then finally doing what I told them to do, and then saying, "Oh, you were right." Well, no shit, Sherlock. I told you that a half an hour ago, but you had me on the phone. Because you hear a female voice, I couldn't possibly know which things to plug into other things. But that's a rant for another day and another time. Anyways, oh, I almost forgot that I said 70%, 20%, so 10%. The other 10% was getting cursed out when a pay-per-view event was not streaming properly. Nothing I can do about that. Sometimes satellites are down. Sometimes there's technical difficulty. Sometimes you're not going to get to see somebody get punched in the face. But go ahead, curse me out for 20 minutes if it makes you feel better. I'm going to put you on mute and color in my coloring book, which I used to keep a little coloring book in my cubicle just for those moments, because I'm just going to put you on mute. I might put you on mute and walk away and go get a coffee and come back and you're still cursing at me. I did that a couple times. That's probably why we got replaced. That's why when you call customer service, not even in America anymore. It's in India, because Americans like me will put you on hold and walk the fuck away. Anyways, what was I talking about? Anyway, I used to drive by a place that looked like that motel, and it was really creepy looking at night, because I would be driving home at night, either 11 o'clock or midnight. Can't remember what time I got off. I just know it was late. And when I would drive by that motel on the turnpike, and the Berlin Turnpike itself is kind of creepy to me. If you're from Connecticut, you know, or Central Connecticut, not Southern Connecticut, probably wouldn't know the Berlin Turnpike, but if you're from Central Connecticut, you know what I'm talking about. It was just creepy. So that kind of, affected me a little bit when watching this movie as well. The villain, Mr. Cochran, was excellent. I like how his motivations were informed by Celtic lore and how they infused Stonehenge and what he did with pieces of Stonehenge and witchcraft. And I think he also mentioned, I apologize to anyone who's from Ireland who, if I mispronouncing the word, but he said he was tying some things back to Samhain, which is the, I think it's the original, I want to say Druid, but it might be considered pagan holiday that Halloween comes from. Another thing I want to say about the way this movie was filmed. The shots towards the end of the children sort of marching with their masks on were superbly well done. Just the way that they're lined up is just beautiful. And it has a slight creepiness to it. There is a reveal at the end of this movie, which I will not spoil no matter how old this movie is, because I really respect my younger viewers. Well, I should say I respect all my viewers, but I don't want to rob my Generation Z viewers of the surprise and the experience of watching this movie, because they are just now watching these movies. They're available for streaming, so to them, they're receiving all these movies at the same time. They're receiving a movie from 1983 at the same time they're receiving a movie from 2018. And they're not going to have the same nostalgia for it that older viewers have. But I think from my interactions with them that they definitely have the same respect for it. And I think that's really cool. So to recap, this movie was a poor attempt at rebranding, but as a standalone film, an excellent film in my opinion. The acting was good. The story was good. The soundtrack, still great. Different, but still great. And by the way, John Carpenter actually came back and scored this third movie. And I think he also executive produced it. As I said, the cinematography definitely holds up against the first two movies. I had just finished talking about how interesting of a concept the story was. And although this was written and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who actually replaced Joe Dante as the original director who was supposed to work on this, Wallace has said that he actually got the idea of witchcraft in the age of computers from Deborah Hill. And in case you don't remember, or you didn't watch my review for the first two Halloween movies, Deborah Hill co-wrote Halloween 1 and 2. So it's very interesting that she also came up with the concept for Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I really appreciate this movie, and I think it really deserves more credit than what it gets. I think some people act salty or butthurt about it because it's not centered on Michael Myers, but as a standalone movie, it is great in its own right, and I really think more people should watch it. But like I always say, just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it, and just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. Did you see Halloween 3 Season of the Witch? What are your thoughts on it? Bye.